Hello and welcome to the Koale Research webinar for Managing Credit Splits with Koale Research. My name is Susan Sorensen. I'm the Product Manager of Sponsored Programs at Koale, and I'm so happy that you could join us today. I'm pleased to present Sally Egloff at University of Maryland, College Park. I did want to let you know about a couple of items before we begin, just to make sure that everyone's aware. You will be on mute throughout the presentation so that we can have the best quality of audio as possible. But you can always add any questions that you want to the questions box, and we will open up time at the end of today's presentation for Q&A. So please type in thoughts that you have as they come to you, and we'll circle back around on those at the end. And did want to let you know that a webinar recording will be sent to you via email after today's recording is complete. So thank you for joining us. I did want to begin today first by asking a couple of questions to help Sally with her presentation today. So we did have a couple of polls that I wanted to ask about. Our first question is, do you use credit splits at your institution? So our responses here are yes, we record multiple credit allocation types. Yes, we record one type of credit split. I'm not sure. No, but we are considering it. So you still have time to add your response, and then we will show the results in just a second. Here we go. It looks like a lot of people on the call do already use their credit allocation types, with many using more than one. And the others on the call are really not sure or are considering the option now. Okay, I do have just a couple more polling questions to ask. So Sally is making cookies, but forgot the chocolate chips. Luckily, her friend Val brings her the chocolate chips. Who is responsible for these delicious cookies? Sally? Val? Both? Or, of course, my favorite, I'm not sure, I just want the cookies. So get your answers in, and we can think about this in the context of how your investigators are answering the appropriate questions to guide their responsibility. Sally is making cookies, but forgot the chocolate chips. Well, in this case, it's really, many people think that it would be both people responsible. And so in that case, we have one more polling question to follow up on. The cookies win a $100 contest. So who should get the money? Again, this probably resonates in terms of what your faculty members are thinking about. Should Sally get all of it? Should Val get some of the money? Should they split it evenly? I'm not sure, I still want the cookies. I'm not sure, in general, I still want the cookies. And so we'll have another second to get your answers in, and we'll then be able to look at what everyone thinks. So most people think that either it should be split evenly or that Val should get some share of it because she's also participating in the process. Excellent. So as we said, this is kind of a lighthearted way to gather some feedback about looking at credit splits in general and how touchy the subject can be. So with no further ado, I did want to introduce Sally Egloff, Assistant Director, Office of Research Administration at the University of Maryland, College Park. We are so pleased to have Sally join us today because she joined the community quite a while ago in 2005. And she now leads the same team at University of Maryland, College Park as she did then. And that she's been using the legacy COIA system for nearly 10 years, and that University of Maryland College Park successfully migrated to Koale Research in the fall of 2017. And while that was just a year ago, she currently has the following modules implemented: proposal development, institutional proposal, negotiations, awards, and subawards. So that basically means Sally knows everything. So Sally, please walk us through now how you manage credit splits at University of Maryland College Park.
Thanks so much, Susan. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm not certain about the everything part, but I will try my best to move forward through this. So I hopefully those polling questions didn't make folks too hungry for cookies. I don't have any, and if I did, we haven't perfected the webinar delivery system as of yet. So this afternoon, as Susan had mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about how Maryland College Park does manage credit splits with Koale Research. A little bit of the history of credit splits at College Park, the what and why credit splits came about and why we needed it was because of our old prior to COEUS system did not have any information in it for multiple investigators is really what it came down to. So our prior system had the room in it for an investigator and an administrating department. So we were it for any proposal or any particular award or an account. And so we were limited in College Park for any proposal or award or account to only indicate one investigator and one department to be associated with any particular record. And so what that left us with was a lack of information for those investigators who had multiple appointments in various departments, interdisciplinary research. We weren't able to provide reports saying that information that Professor X had appointments here and there, and so here are the activity associated with that, and all of the information going forward. And so when we brought up COEUS and then it migrated to Koale Research, there were questions from our users, and including departments, deans, and chairs that said, well, if the system allows us to record multiple investigators and multiple departments for those investigators, is there a way that we are then able to designate who not only is the lead investigator and lead department, but what is their ratio of effort? So many of you had answered or indicated that Val and I both should get some sort of recognition for the work that we put into making those cookies, and that both Val and I should get some sort of split of those funds for the reward for making for winning the prize for making the cookies, which I would not disagree with. Otherwise they would not be chocolate chip cookies if Val didn't come over and give me the chocolate chips. So the next question is how much? And so the credit split feature in Koale Research helps Maryland College Park answer that question of how much. So takes it from a yes, they should absolutely get some sort of credit to how much credit should they actually get. And so at Maryland College Park, credit split allows us as an institution to divide the credit. We use it on both awards and proposals to the appropriate individuals and the departments. And we use credit to mean the recognition for the work on the proposal and the work on the actual award. As I had mentioned, this allows investigators with dual appointments in either official or unofficial capacities. Those relationships between departments that may or may not necessarily have a significant significant relationships. So having credit split allows us to see how much work does psychology do with engineering faculty, as an example, because we now are able to take a look at those proposals and see those proposals and awards that have both the psychology department and a engineering department listed together, just as an example. We can also see those investigators that have multiple appointments associated with a particular individual. With using credit splits, we can also see from the investigator level which investigator is investigator X working with investigator Y regularly, or which sets of investigators are working together. Maryland College Park relies heavily on the credit split to inform our information and actually run our calculations for the indirect cost returns from the expenditures. So while the credit information is housed in Quality Research, once those expenditures hit our financial system and we calculate the indirect cost rate once a year, or the indirect cost off of the expenditures once a year, we take that information and provide it to the provost's office and apply our credit information on the account level and say, all right, well, this is the indirect cost return that was generated on each individual account for each individual investigator for each individual department. And so this is very transparent, as these returns are then made back to the college, and the colleges are then provided with the breakdown of how these funds rolled up based on the account level detail by investigator, by department, and for each and every account. There are other uses, and I know that many of you indicated that you use multiple types of credit, and I know that out of the box, Quality Research does include recognition, responsibility, space, and financial credit options. Maryland College Park uses the recognition option, but the 4 out of the box are available for use. These are 2 examples of awards from our system that I have provided. And on the left-hand side, you can see what we would refer to as a relatively simple credit split. On the left-hand side, we see that this award has 2 investigators, Dr. Pessoa and Dr. Redke. And we can see that Dr. Pessoa has 2 units underneath him, and Dr. Redke has only 1 unit. At Maryland College Park, we do have the parameter set that all of our credit must add up to 100. And so we see that the credit for the award between the 2 investigators is split evenly. Each investigator is getting 50% of the credit. Dr. Pessoa has 2 units and has elected to split his credit between psychology and the neuroimaging center, 62.5% and 37.5%. And Dr. Redke has all of her credit going directly to psychology. On the right-hand side, we have a slightly more complex credit scenario in the fact that this award has 4 different investigators, Dr. Lathrop, Dr. Letty, Dr. Rabin, and Dr. Serrano. And while Dr. Lathrop is getting a preponderance of the credit at 85%, these other 3 investigators are each getting 5% and each getting multiple, each of them have many different units. I bring out this award, or bring up this award, even though to point out that Dr. Lathrop has elected to include 2 units in his credit split that have 0% credit. And that's because in Maryland's processes, 0% credit means something. And what I mean by that, by including both the CMNS IPST, Physical Science and Technology, and the CMNS geology units at 0% credit, this assures that this award will appear on all reports underneath these two units. It will appear with $0 once we apply credit split multipliers a little bit later. I'll get into that. But if we want to see that Dr. Lathrop has this project and geology may have something to do with it as a unit that he is involved with, he did this, and geology has something to do with it, although they will be getting 0% credit, and therefore the returns that they will get will end up being 0%, which is okay. But he chose to assign 0% of his credit to this unit. Obviously, units that are not included would not even be listed on the report. And so at Maryland, the 0% means something. And this information, again, the departments along with the investigators determine who gets credit and to what amount. At the University of Maryland, as I mentioned, identifying the credit of the researchers in the departments affects them in the future. And what we have learned over the past 10 years of using credit splits in our system of record is that having it all located in one place was huge. Was a huge win not only for the departments and colleges, but was a huge win for the university as a whole. Prior to implementing COEUS and then Kuali Research, credit and returns and allocations of the indirect cost was done more on a gentleman's agreement or back of the napkin calculation. And because our system only had the ability 10 years ago to indicate one investigator and one administrating unit, for all of those proposals or awards where there was or were multiple investigators, there was a, back office tally of, well, this investigator worked on this project and we gave you this much money, and this investigator worked on this project and you gave us that much money. And everybody recorded things differently. Having one system of record, Kuali Research, that is transparent and accessible because everyone on campus has access to Kuali Research where the credit split information is recorded, allows folks to access the information, make updates to the information or request updates to the information as needed, and allows us to correctly track those multidisciplinary activities. Finally, what it allows us to do is it allows everyone to count and correctly count their portion of the project. So rather than have 3 investigators or 3 departments claim a $10 million award as their $10 million award, which would be awesome if 3 departments brought in a $10 million award, that may not be the case. And instead, Department A can count their portion of the award, because in our reports we'll say Department A brought in this much of the award, applied their credit to the award total. Department B brought in this much because we'll apply their credit to the award total. And so each department is counting their portion, and we are not recounting or double counting or sometimes triple counting portions of the award. We're only counting award dollars once. In practice, Maryland College Park assigns credit at the proposal development stage. This is the stage where the investigators are most involved in the creation and development of the proposal. And this is where we have the investigators have those discussions with their co-investigators and have those discussions with their department and college. The department and college review the credit split as part of their proposal. And if they see something that is a little bit off, they will have those discussions with the investigator to see if there are equity issues or to see if there are standard agreements between particular departments or for individual investigators that need to apply. And this is where we talk about splitting maybe money. Once I get my award and my bake-off for $100 for making awesome cookies, it's really hard for me to give up that $100, even though Val is my friend and she probably deserves some money for bringing me chocolate chips to make these fabulous cookies. It's a lot easier to put that $100 in my pocket. But if I had told her, or we had had the discussion up front, that I'm entering a contest for cookies, I forgot the chocolate chips. If you bring me the chocolate chips and I win the contest, I will split the money with you, and we come to an agreement. That splitting of the maybe money that is potential at the proposal stage becomes a lot less contentious. The award resulting from this proposal, and again, this is Maryland process, that any awards that result from that proposal will follow that credit split. We assign any parent and child accounts that may result the same credit split, and we have a process to change the credit, and we do ask that everyone agree again to the credit. My office, the Central Sponsored Projects Office, we stay out of the agreements and how the credit is determined, and it is simply recorded in Koale Research. At the proposal development stage, credit is part of the proposal that is routed for approval, that is agreed to and signed off by all of the investigators at the department and at the department and college level. And so everybody has agreed to it as part of the proposal. A large portion of credit and dealing with credit at Maryland seems to focus on our DRIF, or Designated Research Initiative Fund returns. This is Maryland's acronym for our indirect cost return process. And I know that many universities have a similar process, might call it something a little bit different. This is Maryland's acronym. We take the fiscal year expenditures, we combine the fiscal year expenditures with the fiscal year credit. The indirect cost of the fiscal year expenditures combined with the fiscal year credit on an account by account basis. One of the things that we learned very early on in doing this process is that we needed to make a decision as to which credit number we are going to apply. Because credit on an award may change during a particular fiscal year. If an investigator leaves a project, or the credit happens to change during the course of the fiscal year, or an investigator is added to the project. And so what was determined as part of our process and what was communicated with the university was that the credit as it stood at the end of the fiscal year was what the credit would be applied for the entire fiscal year. So we decided not to break down and count days. We said whatever it is on June 30 would be the credit that we would apply for the entire fiscal year. That ended up saving us a lot of headaches, so that we didn't have to say, oh, well, you had 50% credit for, 20% of the days, and that was just going to be too much. Some of the more technical pieces within Kuali Research, there is a maintenance table for the credit type. This is, as I mentioned, we use one credit type. So in our instance, it's type 1. And the flag that I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we do force it to add up to 100. And so our users, when they are in the credit split allocation screen in Kuali Research, they will get a error message if the credit, as they're entering credit, does not add up to 100, which is a friendly reminder if they have mistyped anything. There are a few parameters that I listed out here. We do have credit split enabled in proposal development, institute proposal, and award, so that it does carry through from each of those, the next module as something is moved through. The next two parameters I'm going to talk about in a little bit more depth on the next screen. Credit split opt-in on default roles and credit split opt-in on personnel credit split functionality. These were two parameters that we realized that were needed when we implemented Kuali Research last year. And Kuali was wonderful in adding these parameters for us and making them available within the product. The credit split opt-in on default roles allows users to say what roles in proposal development specifically, and I believe, and Susan, please correct me if I'm wrong, on what roles a individual user will automatically be added to the credit split table. And so the valid values, as I have listed here, are PI, multiple PI, co-I, and key person. And so we have at College Park selected all but key person, because that's what we determined would make sense for our business processes. And then there are certain occasions that we want an individual added to the personnel in proposal development, but we don't want them added to the credit split. And so this scenario would be if the proposal requirement is that a non-University of Maryland person needs to be added as a principal investigator, let's say. So normally a principal investigator would be assigned credit, but because they're a non-University of Maryland person, we're not going to give a non-University of Maryland person credit. And so we don't want to include that person in our credit allocation. And so we wanted a way to include or decide to include or exclude personnel from the credit split. And so there is a flag underneath the details on your screen. It's on the bottom right-hand side, where you can include or not include to give credit to any individual that is added to the personnel screen and proposal development, institute proposal or award, and then this controls if they are now on the credit split allocation screen. So this has been incredibly useful for us at College Park to have this screen here in proposal development. It then carries forward into institute proposal and award, so that we can still have those non-University of Maryland personnel listed on our proposals and awards, even though they are not part of our Maryland credit processes. A lot of our, well, almost all of our reports include credit information with them. And this is part of our transparency and part of our activity, including credit. And so because we include, or because we ask for credit for a proposal and we include credit on an award, we want to provide that credit information on every report that is available to our campus. And so this is an example of a report. This is actually that same award that the credit split that we saw earlier for Dr. Pizzoa and Dr. Redke. And so this is an example of our fiscal year award detail report from our data warehouse. What we have decided to do, and I'll just take a look at the bottom here, is that on this particular report, all of the information on the left-hand side is just very basic information. We have the award ID, the account number, the sponsor, the obligated dollars for the entire life of the award, the dollars specifically received in that FY. And then on the right-hand side, we have the credit for that particular FY. And then the credit applied to those FY dollars. So if I take a look for the FY dollars for Dr. Pizzoa, it's the 50% applied to the $675,000. And so his investigator dollars are $337,753. He then, because he has two departments, his investigator dollars are then further split into his two departments. His first department is 211, his second department is 126. And so the FY total for the three departments for those two investigators is 675 for FY 2017, which does indeed match what we see in the middle. What Maryland had decided to do for this, for reporting purposes, is that we use the maximum award version for a particular FY, and that's how we get the credit to use. So in our data warehouse or in our data tables, there is a version of this award for 2017. There may be more than one. In this one, I happen to know that there are a couple. We use the max award version. Let's say it's version number 5. And this 50% credit split is the maximum version. And this is what we applied. Another way that you could do this from the reporting side that we had considered, and we actually did use it in COEUS days, was to create a frozen credit split table for each fiscal year and go against that. We decided to go a slightly different route with Koale Research. But the bottom line that we decided to do, both when we had COEUS and again with Koale Research, was to make sure that we include this information on all of our reports, both on the award detail and then again with our reports for investigators and our reports for departments. Reporting with credit allows us to compare apples to apples. And so on this screen, if I take a look at the division level on the left-hand side, I'm assured, because we report by credit, that none of these dollars are duplicated. So all of my FY17 dollars, those are transactions done in FY17 that are assigned to each of those colleges. So I know that this particular college, that I have not double counted any of those funds. College Park uses the notice date on the time and money document, because we do use the time and money document in the award to determine the fiscal year of our transaction. We're able to do the exact same information. So we can do this by college, we can do this by department, and we can do this by investigators, which is what you see on the right-hand side. So if we needed to rank our investigators or identify how much a particular investigator is responsible for bringing in transactions in a particular year, we are able to do that, or realistically with any particular time frame. So what we've noticed, initially there was a question of, wait a second, there's another thing that I have to record. But folks were already recording it. Someone was already recording it somewhere. And at Maryland College Park, it was a slightly different scenario, because credit was something that was asked for by the departments and colleges, that they actually asked for a centralized system to be recorded. So how can this be managed more centrally, so that they can stop doing the back of the napkin calculations? How can this become more transparent? How can this become more standardized? So the shift at Maryland College Park was actually quite easy for many folks. For others, we did have to have significant communication, as with many things. I did ask and go out and talk to some department college budget, or some college budget officers. And these were a couple of their responses when I asked them about, over the past 10 years or the past 15 years or so, how they felt about credit versus non-credit based reports. And our AGNR, our Ag Office Credit Budget Officer, had mentioned that he felt it deconstructed the possessiveness. So it allowed for him and his researchers and his dean in general to recognize and have involvement from all of his investigators and units, rather than just the one who was leading the project and administering the particular proposal and award. And another college budget officer commented that when she had faculty members who were jointly appointed, oftentimes a faculty member would select a unit to administer many of their awards. But the other department that was not selected to administer the award would often have work to do. And having the ability to assign credit to both of their units allowed that recognition to take place, that both units were doing work on behalf of this faculty member. So even though the faculty member could only designate one lead unit, the faculty member would ask individuals from both units to help him or her out with their project. And credit allowed for that recognition. And so we see that credit not only allows for the recognition of multiple faculty, it allows for the recognition of multiple units. And then we can extrapolate that to multiple colleges as well. one of our biggest lessons learned in implementing credit splits and using credit splits in reporting over the last decade or so was credit split becomes real money. Splitting up proposed money is easier and leads to fair allocations to college departments and investigators. And there was an understanding, or there has become an understanding or realization among faculty and staff that what they put down on their proposal today eventually affects them and their college and department in the future, because it turns into funds as part of those designated research initiative funds that allows them to have additional funds in the future. And so Maryland made that part of our communication that the credit equals the drift. And so that is, kind of our standard process, that credit equals drift, drift equals credit. And so it was, for us, a very clear connection of this equals that, and we know that drift equals money. And so this is how you will anticipate what your drift calculation will end up being. The outset of that, or the result of that, is all of our proposals and all of our awards have credit splits applied, and all of our reports are run with credit. So at this point, I think that Susan has some questions that you have all typed furiously away at, so I will please take those.
Great, thank you so much, Sally. It was really interesting to hear you lead us through the thought process that University of Maryland College Park went through to utilize credit splits. We do so value your voice in the community, sincerely, and I appreciate your time with us today. So yes, let's go into question and answer time. Okay, so we have a question here from West Virginia University. When propagating the credit splits from proposed development to institutional proposal, there is a one-to-one relationship, yes. How does this work when you're funding your awards and you have more than one PI as a funding source for your awards? So I think that this question kind of gets to the root of how your awards are set up in College Park, and how you decide to go about managing those credit splits in that award hierarchy.
Sure, great question. Thanks, West Virginia. So at Maryland College Park, any award or any accounts associated or that result from an award will have that same credit split as the particular proposal. So if a proposal results in an award, all accounts associated with that award will have that same credit split. If we have multiple proposals that result in, if we have multiple proposals that result in one award, and those proposals have differing credit splits, then we'll ask the departments involved for clarification as to, okay, now what? And everybody needs to come to an agreement again. But typically, if we have one proposal to one award and the terms and conditions of the award require us to create multiple accounts, we will apply the exact same credit split to all of those accounts, or all of those parent and child accounts in Koale Research.
Great, thanks for explaining. One of the other questions that we have here is relating to the investigators that are answering these credit split allocations. And has there been any pushback on that, since this is connected to your financial dispensation of it?
So initially there was some questions as to what do I put down? And so when Maryland initially implemented in 2008, 2009, we had a big push, as I'm sure that many of you do when you're implementing any product or any new feature of a product, and went out to all of our colleges and all of our, as many meetings as we could possibly be invited to, and needed to explain what was happening. And so what Maryland decided to do was that if the system, and so again, this was 10 years ago, that if the system did not have any credit information at all, so if no credit information was ever entered on the history of the award, the lead PI and the lead unit, which we had indicators for, would get 100% of the credit. So the PI would get 100% of the credit, and his or her lead unit would get 100% of the credit. And so we sent out series of reports. And so we started to send these out in about March, and said to our contacts in the departments, and said, this is what your credit will look like. This is the lead PI. This is the lead unit. This is who will get 100% of the credit for the investigator and for the department. If you are okay with this, leave it as is. If you want it changed, change it. And we had a grace period where folks could make changes just for that one-time deal, just so that we could load for the very, very, very first time when we first indicated credit, that you could put your credit onto this piece of paper and we would take it as it was for those awards. And so that was their only time that they could say, here's my award and here's my credit. Everything else from that point forward had to be on the proposal side, where the investigators had to either certify in the system or sign off on the proposal routing form that they agree to everything within the proposal, including the credit. And so when they agree, they are to the proposal within Koale Research and certify that proposal, they are saying that they agree to the credit split as well. So no, we haven't received a whole lot of pushback from the investigators at all. So I think that answered the question. So please correct me if there was a portion of that that I may have missed.
No, that sounds great. It's very helpful to have in mind like the perspective of what the faculty might experience as a school is planning on rolling that type of thing out. I do have another question though. This one comes from UMass Amherst, and they were wondering, how does credit split or RTF split flow to your financial system? And if you don't mind sharing, could you tell us which financial system you use?
Sure. So we are currently using Koale Financials, and right now the credit itself does not flow through our financial system. However, the PI and lead unit does flow to the financial system, so that within Koale Financials on the account basis, I'm probably going to get the terms wrong, so please forgive me, that the accountant, financial manager, and project manager can all be assigned correctly. But the credit itself always resides in Koale Research. And so that's why when it is time to calculate those returns, we take the expenditure information from our financial system and marry it together with the credit information from Kuali Research. So unfortunately, our financial system does not house the credit information, so we have to marry those two pieces of information together based on the account number, because Kuali Research has the account number, and obviously our accounting system has the account number. And so we marry those two pieces together, and I would say voila. But of course, nothing is easy as magic, but it becomes voila eventually.
I do have another question from West Virginia University. Got to make sure I get those universities in the right placement. And they're asking, if you have a 50-50 credit split, does that mean the actual award money is also split 50-50? She can see some instances in which the credit goes 50-50, but more of the money needs to go into one unit versus the other. So does this become a problem in terms of the allocation of recognition versus credit, say due to expensive equipment or needing more grad students or something like that?
Great question. And this is something that this is a question that we get often. And the answer is no. That is the lovely part about credit, is if you use credit, the number of accounts and the allocation of funds does not matter, because if you apply credit to each of those accounts associated with that same award, everything comes out in the wash. And so obviously, the terms and conditions of the award and the processes of the university always have to take play. But if you have one cookie, and I know I'm talking about cookies a lot today, I think I might be a little hungry. So if you have one cookie and you decide to split that cookie 50-50 and give each person half of the cookie, great. So now folks each have their own account. So you effectively have split the money. Okay, well, you've split the money. Fine. Or you can have one account and both folks can have 50% of the credit. No matter how I do the math, both folks have 50%. The same is true if I have a dozen cookies. So if I have a dozen cookies and everybody takes half of one cookie, I end up with 12 halves, or 6 cookies, or 12 halves of a cookie, or I end up with 6 whole cookies. Either way, I have the same amount of cookies, because that's just how the math works. So if I have 50% of the whole, or if I split the whole and I have all of my half, it's either way works out. So I can either split the money and apply the credit that way, or I can split out the funds and apply the credit. So either way, it will all come out in the wash.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, I know that it is really hard for people to think about it in terms of real dollar amounts, because there's so much at stake then. And so the percentage approach really is nice to have that instead. I just have one more question here, and that's related to, again, your process and in terms of the life cycle at UMCP. So do you do the credit split allocations only on the new project, and then that follows it throughout the the supplemental years, the continuing years on the project? Or is that something that you manage on a year-by-year basis?
So at College Park, the credit is the credit until somebody tells us that the credit needs to change. And we do have a process for the credit changing. So if there is a reason for the credit to change, whatever that reason may be, either there's a change in the scope. So maybe in year 3, one of the investigators who was integral to the project is no longer a part of the project, or an investigator moves to another university, or a new investigator comes on and is part of this project, Maryland will absolutely change the credit. And so we do have there's a form for that. We do have a credit split change form. And we ask that all of the investigators sign off on that credit split change so that it is very transparent to everybody involved, and that we do have representatives from the chairs and the deans also sign off on that form, because they have signed off on the original proposal and credit. And so we ask them to agree to the updates of any of that credit. And so credit can change throughout the life of the award as necessary, as deemed necessary by the participants in the award. So they deem it necessary, we will happily record that change. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, whatever the credit is at the end of the fiscal year, the University of Maryland will use and apply that credit to the entire fiscal year. So both the award dollar reports and the return reports will use that credit at the end of the fiscal year.
Perfect. Well, thanks again so much, Sally. I really appreciate the time that you spent. I know that doing a webinar like this takes a lot of time preparing, and then the hour that you've spent with us. And have a great day.